it will also prepare you, as well as this will also take care of fire certification preparation as well. So this is designed in that way where you have the practical experience, as well as you can prepare for fire proficiency certificate exam if that is on your mind as of now.
Yeah, obviously, I'm actually looking for certification.
Yeah, definitely. Then we'll take this course in that particular direction as well. And the training will cover all the concepts from basics, such as I initially asked about whether you have experience around XML or JSON or what. Even if participant doesn't have any such knowledge, I usually take some sessions so that they get used to JSON. Usually, I prefer the JSON as a format of hands-on throughout the course.
Okay.
So we'll cover that as well. And we'll also cover advanced topics such as profiling, slicing, etc. Those things will cover. And regarding the course, it would be a 30 hours course. Approximately 30 days it will be if we take out average of 1 hour on a daily basis. Plus minus 5 hours based on how much we deep dive into discussion sessions as well, and that might delay plus minus 5 hours. In some cases, if a participant is totally new to fire, then it might take much more sessions for the discussions and question and answer sessions. In that cases, we might stretch. And in some cases, I see participant has some background in fire, so it finishes early than 30 hours.
Okay.
Yeah, and it will be webinar training, like we are connecting now. And almost every session will have some hands-on assignment, so that from working experience perspective, some knowledge can be gained, and some own analysis can be made while working with fire.
Okay.
Yeah, and there would be every third or second session there would be question and answer session, but it is flexible. Whenever you feel it's a lot has been covered and you have some questions that needs to be revisited, or I feel like a lot has been covered, and let's review the assignments that we have seen previously in previous sessions.
Makes sense. Yep.
Yeah, in those cases we can plan a session after every third or maybe second session to discuss on those stuffs. And by the end of the session we'll have a mock test. So this mock test will be in the format of in the real fire certificate exam.
Okay.
So that by the end of the session you will have a question bank, so that you can directly take it as a reference before the actual exam. It will help you
Great.
revise in a much quicker way rather than going through the whole course.
Yep.
And apart from that, I'll also be highlighting statements or the topics that are much relevant from the certificate exam perspective.
Okay.
Yeah, the expectation attend all live sessions. Since I guess this would be 2 of us only, so that shouldn't be a problem. So either there would be a course, there would be a session, or there won't be a session, based on both of our availability. It is expected to complete all the assignments. That would be much helpful to you.
Yep. That's true.
Yeah, if your agenda is to do a hands-on on the fire.
Yeah.
And around 6 to 10 hours per week might be required from your end. So 5 hours would be from the session itself, and might be some hours while preparing the assignments, or if you are giving any extra time from your end.
Got it. Yeah.
Yeah, and while going through the course, it is designed in a way so that a fresh mind for the fire can also pick up.
Okay.
And ask questions whenever you feel like.
Yeah.
And course schedule. So this is an Excel sheet that I have formulated, covering the topics that we will go throughout the course. So first session would be onboarding and welcome course, and then we'll dive into introduction to fire. After introduction to fire, we'll look into what fire resources are and what are the concepts around that, and then we'll move into building resources, how we can build resources or create resources, JSON resources. Then we'll move into the CRUD operations. So we'll cover one by one, create, read, update, delete, and there are various variants such as conditional create, conditional update, all those kinds of things. I will also cover REST API use cases from the Fire perspective, how to do Fire queries, searching. So, one by one, we'll cover all the topics here. So just for guidance, how we will navigate throughout the session, I have mentioned some topics here.
I also heard that Mirth, we are going to use it for connection, and is that right?
For Fire, I'm not using Mirth. I'll be using Postman and for all the hands-on or showing any scenarios.
Okay.
Are you in need of learning Mirth?
Yeah.
Okay. Actually, I usually use Postman. I don't prefer Mirth as of now.
Okay.
Yeah. But if you know the concepts, and if you have the knowledge about Mirth, then it shouldn't be much difficult replicating the same thing in Mirth.
Okay. Fine.
So we'll move into the introduction to Fire part. So these are the two topics that we have divided in day 1 and day 2. So based on our timings and how we'll cover, how much we can cover.
Are you based out of India or USA?
I'm based out of India.
Okay, fine. I saw something over United States somewhere. Huh? Okay, fine.
What is that?
I saw something United States somewhere in your.
I'm not sure. Maybe. Okay, this in the logo you might have seen.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, please.
Yeah. So this SVS soft solution SVS, we are operating both in global level actually, but targeting as well as US and India as the most of our clients for training purposes.
Okay.
Yeah. So we'll cover what is Fire, why Fire came into evolution, and what is Fire scope and what all can be done using Fire. Then why Fire is better comparison with V2 and V3. And we'll also have a look around how to navigate around Fire website. So background, why Fire, how Fire came into picture. So in 2011, this board HL7 International organization, they were doing some round ballot and discussing things. If HL7 were to starting afresh today, what would the interoperability standards look like? In that meeting, few drawbacks of existing standards such as version 2, version 3, and CDA came out. Those are as such. So version 2 was successful, but technology was old, so it was not suited to new requirements such as the new mobile applications or the new cases of research that are coming up. Those are not possible with version 2. Version 2 was a robust model. By robust model, we mean they tried a lot to support as much as elements that could be possible in healthcare at global level. But with that, it becomes much more heavier to process. That's why it's not much been accepted and by the implementer community. And then CDA was successful, but it could only fulfill the purpose of document exchange, not for any other scenarios such as other clinical or administrative purposes. That was the drawback of CDA. Also, the toolings that we require, since you mentioned you have worked with HL7 and HL7 V2X standards, you might have noticed that for working with these you need separate tools. You cannot use regular tools that are available on Fire for the developer or implementation or implementation. Yeah. So this is also one of the major challenge that I faced when I started working with Fire, because I had to learn other tooling that I have never heard of, and that learning curve actually stretches when it's a new tool. For example, the case of Mirth itself. Mirth is something that is specific to HL7 V2. It is not a general tool that can be used by any other format such as XML, JSON. And the new cases such as I mentioned about the mobile devices. So the way like any other IT sector is moving towards mobile technologies, mobile apps, the same thing is also happening in healthcare, but because this HL7 V2.X is not much suitable for that purposes, it is actually restricting that evolution. And the HL7 V2 is not based on REST-based architecture, and REST-based is something that eases life of implementation, and a lot can be developed. A lot of scenarios can be developed using if REST is supported. So based on this, the Fire has been evolved. We'll see what were the goals that were decided, when Fire was being set. So the first goal was it is easy to develop. As you mentioned starting of the session, this is not much of a code. So that has been kept in mind that it should be easy to develop. There should be very, shallow learning curve, even if it is there. Tooling requirements, as I mentioned, I'll be using Postman, for this particular session. So things were kept in mind so that it can be easily picked up by the implementers and they can start working on it. It should be easy to implement the way HL7v2 is there. All the way the format it is not easy to interpret it. It is not easy to implement it. But when it comes to Fire, it is quite easy to interpret it. I guess you already have gone to the Fire website and have seen some samples of XML and JSON. The kind of definitions are there, the kind of examples are there. One can easily understand it and implement it. Fire should be semantically robust. By semantically robust, we mean since most of the legacy systems would already been developed in HL7v2.x, and that would need migration from HL7v2 to HL7 Fire. So while creating the specification of Fire, this has been kept in mind that it should be easily convertible from HL7v2.x to Fire and the vice versa. And it should be implementer friendly. By implementer friendly, we meant common tools can be used, common formats can be used for implementation of Fire, rather than creating separate tools, dedicated tools for healthcare standards. And since this is related to healthcare standards, be it HL7v2 or HL7 Fire, has to be consumed by both technical and non-technical experts. So while making these artifacts of Fire, it is kept in mind that even non-technical person should be able to correlate with it, who should be able to interpret it, rather than just depending on the technical person to figure out something worthwhile. That has been taken care. And the artifact should be validated electronically. By this we mean there are structure definitions in Fire. There are formats in Fire through which you can validate whether your input is right or wrong instead of depending manually on it. And it also integrates with new technologies that are coming up, such as HTTP, XML, JSON, etc. Yeah, so those were the goals in mind, and let's see how these goals are fulfilled by Fire, and what features has been taken into Fire so that we were able to achieve those goals. So the first part is specification is hosted on the web and is fully hyperlinked. The purpose that it serves is that whenever you need any extra learning on a particular topic, you can directly navigate to that hyperlink and get the descriptions that you're requiring. While if you compare the same thing with HL7v2.x, you have to download the whole document and then open document one by one and actually search for your interested topic.
Yep.
Yeah, personally I feel that very much boring process, very tiring process. And when I work with Fire, it enables me a lot. Rather than wasting time on searching the right topic, I can directly click on the hyperlinks and read my descriptions. It is easy to read format for all resources. It has narrative content, it has JSON and XML content as well. So both clinicians as well as technical experts can interpret information out of it. We'll see in detail how that narrative part also comes into picture, how we can interpret that. And several examples are given on Fire resources. So if you open the Fire website, there is a separate section by the examples. Have you seen that tab yet?
Hello. Yep.
So just wanted to ask, have you gone through the example tab on the Fire website on each resource?
Not it, not it.
So if you open the Fire website, I'll just so each and every resource has examples attached to it, so that you don't have to create any resource from the fresh from the beginning. You can have those resources. This is the example tab where you will see different examples are there. So some resources have particular resource has only 2 examples. Some resources have multiple examples, such as patient. So, you can directly take this as a reference, modify it, and create your test data.
Okay.
Yeah. So this really help a lot. Yeah, but to the implementer, especially understanding it. While if you compare it with HL7v2, I personally find it very hard to search for examples. In today's world, I still see there are websites available, where I can look for the examples, although not that much, but still there. While when I started working with HL7v2 6 years back, I was not finding that much examples of HL7v2. I have to create the whole structure after reading the documentation of HL7v2. That one ease is there while working with Fire. And the development process is is standardized. By standardized we mean if you see the Fire website now, there are total 145 resources, but in any case in next Fire version, these are 145 resources that are being supported by Fire.
Yep. Version 4.4 contains how many resources?
Version 4 contains 145 resources.
145.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, but I doubt you would be working with all these resources, because it depends on use case to use case as well. Plus, not all resources are at maturity level. Most of the resources, such as enrollment request, it has 0 maturity level.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so we'll see how to interpret these maturity levels also in further sessions. Yeah, so I was talking about that in current version, which is standard R4. There are 145 resources. In future, there might be some more resources being added, some other data types could be added, but it won't become as a surprise to implementers of Fire, because the way the new resources or the new data types would be created, that is standardized. They would be easily able to interpret if they have already worked with previous resources.
Okay.
Yes. So if you see HL7v2 and CDA, these are 2 different standards. You need different kind of knowledge for both the things. You cannot work on just by one and get the other standard. And there are a lot of implementations, reference implementations are available, such as the Fire is being implemented in Java, .NET, C, and these the links to these implementations are available on the Fire website. So whoever is creating any Fire server or database from the scratch can use these references and build upon these.
Okay.
And there are various Fire test servers are available that are public. So that are public, for example, Happy Fire server, then Bomb Fire server, even Graham Greene's Fire server are there. You can create your resources, work around with those REST APIs, and see the responses that you get from these Fire test servers. While if I compare with the same thing with HL7v2, I don't see any database or any server that is publicly available and is actually compliant with HL7v2.
Yeah, one thing, if you want to implement Fire, do we need to have a server compulsory, FHIR server?
It's not compulsory. So for example, if I talk about my day-to-day task, it is more about acting as a middleware that converts HL7v2 to Fire and Fire to vice versa, or any customized format such as XML, JSON into Fire format. And then it is published either to Fire server or either to databases. It doesn't necessarily, it has to be Fire server.
Okay.
Yeah.
No, in HL7 2.x, what happens is they'll give the format. The format we can generate through our code and send it to through TCP, API, or MLLP, whatever we want it. But there is no server concept in HL7 2.x.
Yeah. So the Fire test servers are actually implemented so that there are less what we say errors due to validations, but less errors due to lack of data and all those things.
Of course, all those things will be taken care even without having a server too. We can have a workbench kind of thing where we can do all the validations.
Yeah, but in that cases, I guess the REST APIs are not defined right for in the backend. There is no standard way. I mean, the way you are interacting with your backend.
Of course, we follow the same structure, same JSON formats, and everything is same.
Okay.
Still, we need to have a server. I don't think
No, you don't need to have a server. It's just a general practice.
Okay.
So that one implementation shouldn't have much data compared to the other implementation.
Yep, got it.
It's not a mandate thing. It's just a regular thing that regularizing that is happening at the global level. So that if you go with the test servers, Fire test servers, then you would be less data compared to other implementation.
Okay.
So in future, if your product is actually integrating with any other implementation, you will see less surprises there.
Okay.
Yeah. And you can easily connect with the Fire community through these communication channels, through Wiki, through Skype conversations, Stack Overflow. I personally prefer Fire Zulip chat. That's my favorite when it comes to asking my questions to the Fire community. Now let's get an introduction about the technical aspects of Fire as well. So Fire stands for, okay, one more thing. I have highlighted anything that is green. If I see anything that has much relevant with respect to Fire certification exam, I have highlighted that with the green thing.
Okay.
Whenever you are referring or in these slides in future, you can directly revise or go through these statements. Yeah. So FHIR stands for Fast Healthcare Interoperability Resources. Fast as in it is expected that through HL7 FHIR, your implementation would be much faster compared to previous standards. And it is used for healthcare interoperability purposes. That was the term, and then that's why the healthcare interoperability term is there. And the term resources comes from the component, the concept of FHIR itself, which is the modular components. So anything minimal that can be done through FHIR independently is through resources. You cannot exchange data types, you cannot exchange elements, but any minimal independent data that can be exchanged through REST API is resources. We'll see in detail what resources are, how these are created, and what different types of resources are.
Okay.
Yeah. And it combines best features of HL7, V2, V3, and CDA. For example, HL7, V2, if you're aware about this extensibility framework from V2, the Z segment, that has been taken care in FHIR. And then HL7 V3 was intended to support most of the elements so that a global level kind of scenarios can be supported. Again, with FHIR, even if regular base specification is not supporting the use cases, then that can be done through profiling or extensions. CDA were used for document exchange. Even FHIR can be used for document exchange. And as I mentioned, FHIR solutions are built from modular components such as resources. We'll see that in detail, what resources are and what it looks like in terms of structure. And these resources can either be exchanged independently, individually, or it can be combined together to solve real world, clinical and administrative problems. For example, take the scenario of whole use case where a patient is, booking an appointment, visiting the hospital, and then getting discharged. So these whole scenario can be accomplished by a combination of resources such as patient, encounter, appointment, and interlinking with each other to achieve this particular scenario. As well as you can also play around with individual resources such as you can admit a patient, you can create a doc encounter or appointment also. Okay. And this FHIR is much suitable for contexts such as mobile applications, any cloud communications, HR based data sharings. Coming to the various releases of FHIR, there are total Five versions are there. R5 is still in progress. It is not yet released for the implementation, implementers. Although it is available on the website globally, but that still sees a lot of changes. So it is not suggested to adopt R5. Although you can do, but you will see a lot of changes in future as well. So the current normative version that you will see is R4. This is the link to that current versions, and also you can navigate it from here.
Okay.
Yeah, so basically R4 is the normative version, and most of the implementation that you will see around the globe is going on R4. And throughout this session, we'll also focus on R4 rather than any other version.
Okay.
Yeah. So what is the scope of FHIR? FHIR can be used, as I mentioned, to achieve clinical workflows, administrative workflows, such as maintaining, records of staff, or maintaining records of medicines, or any inventory such as devices. There are resources which can hold information about doctors, devices, medicines. If you see, if I give you one example, or help you navigate with the resources, you will see resources such as medication administration. These all can be used for managing inventory stock. While if we see resources such as practitioner role, then practitioner, this can be used to manage, and person as well, to manage the staff. And there are other multiple resources are there. For research perspective also, you will see some resources such as specimen and all. I have seen molecular sequences, then specimen. So these kind of resources can be used to support research workflows as well. Similarly, there are multiple cases, scenarios, even financial aspects can be fulfilled. There are resources which holds informations of insurance claims and coverages that are possible when we deal with insurance scenarios. So those can be achieved through FHIR.
Okay.
And how FHIR supports exchange? There are four ways FHIR supports data exchange or information exchange, and these are the four types: messaging, document, services, and REST. Messaging, you are aware since you work with HL7v2. So any information exchange that is event based. For example, a patient is admitted, and with that, whatever information comes, that comes into the umbrella of messaging, such as you will formulate HL7v2 or FHIR message, including information such as patient. You will have visit information. You will have maybe doctor information or appointment information if that is available. And in documents, so if I summarize document is an independent set of information that can be exchanged from one system to another, or one entity to another, such as one doctor to another, or one hospital to another, that can be referenced independently without much needing to track any other information. So that is a document. If I give one example, for example, whenever a patient is discharged, so why a patient has been admitted, what all procedures or surgeries or what medications he has gone through one hospital visit, and what are the allergies a patient has observed through all those things. Those has been documented in one particular set, and you can give that document to patient for a record purpose. They can keep it, and in any future they want to refer to any other hospital or doctor, they can show that particular document to them, and the new hospital or the new service provider would be able to get an idea about the history of the patient.
Yep.
Yeah, so that is an independent record, if I say, when it comes to document. Services, let's suppose, although this kind of implementation is not yet there in the global level, but it could be possible in future cases, such as if you want to fetch your medical record for last month, then the way in your bank statements you click on a particular link and you are able to download your whole statement. Similarly, that could be a possibility in healthcare world also. If you want to go through your medical records of last month, you can click on some button and the system should be able to give you and generate a whole medical record for yourself.
Mhm.
So those kind of services can be created by implementers and to serve the use cases. And in REST API, you can either deal with individual resources or you can deal with multiple resources. While working with messaging document services, you are not working with individual resources. Although, for example, in messaging, the message header is something that is a mandate resource, and then the rest of the resources come into picture. Same goes with the documents. Composition resource is one of the resource that is mandated, and then comes the rest of the resources. With services, it's possible to serve the particular use case with one resource could be used, but I don't think that is possible. Even one resource is used, then might be multiple instances of that could be used. For example, if you talk about the medical records itself, so medical record of a day before yesterday, and then before that week. So all of the resources medical record, but the multiple instances of that being used. While in REST, you can actually work with individual instances and individual resources. For example, um, whenever a patient is admitted, you can just save the details of patient. You don't have to actually save other details as well, such as appointment or doctor details. Whenever these are available in future scenarios, those can be added and linked with this patient.
Mhm.
And coming to databases, FHIR doesn't mandate that it has to be stored in the format of FHIR resources in the backend, but that is one way of doing it. Although I have not seen any implementation of the DB that shows FHIR resources exactly as it is. Usually people fetch it and save it in the tabular format. That usually the practices. Now we'll have a look at the FHIR website. So for me, this is the GoToGo FHIR website. Why? Because it has linked to all the various versions of FHIR. So if you see R5 is there, R4 is there, then S23 is there, DS23 is there. So in any case, you have to compare various versions of FHIR, what has changed. Or let's suppose today we are doing a conversion between HL7V2 and FHIR. In future use cases, you might be converting one version of FHIR to previous version of FHIR or future version of FHIR.
Yep.
So in those cases, you might use this particular web page as a reference to navigate to those particular versions. This particular version that you see here current is actually a working branch. So implementers, the actual FHIR community is actually, whenever they want to make any change, they actually publish to this one. So I usually suggest not to use this particular branch at all for your implementation, because today you are implementing something, and a day after today, if you are opening this branch, you might see some changes in this as well. And here would be the normative version that would be available. So currently it is 4.0.1. In future, it could be 5, 6, whichever is normative version. Prefer the normative version for your implementation. So we'll click on this and then we move into FHIR. So if you see, this is FHIR R4. If it would have been R5, then that particular version would have been mentioned here. And this is the home page. You see, this is a very small page, but a lot of hyperlinks are there. So you can navigate and get descriptions about that. We'll go through this page, and also if we'll see different links that are actually leading from here. If you see, there are different types of summaries are there. There is executive summary, there is developer's introduction, there is clinical introduction, and the introduction from the points of architects. So whoever is the audience, for example, a non-technical person can go through this particular link and get an idea about FHIR. From an implementer can go through this particular link and understand from a technical point of view. And if you want to understand the architecture of FHIR, the way FHIR is designed, then one can go through this particular web link and get the description. We'll go through these one by one and figure out various source of information that is available
Hmm.
in sessions, but this is where the whole thing is being mapped. The information about the license, the kind of licenses, it is an open license. Anyone can use it and redistribute it.
Hmm.
Also, again, we'll see in detail in future sessions what different restrictions are there to use Fire. There are restrictions on using Fire logos, or how to redistribute this particular specification. So
Hmm.
those things will cover. But again, here is the link. You can navigate to this particular web page and get the description. Then anyone who is new to XML and JSON can use these web links. What are the
Hmm.
do's? What are the don'ts of working with JSON and working with XML? And the data types. So the way HL7v2 has data types, there are primitive data types, there are complex data types. Similarly, HL7 Fire has similar kinds of concept. There are data types such as string, numeric, decimal, and as well as complex data types such as identifiers. There, I guess even HL7v2 has identifier, right?
Yep.
Yeah, address is there. Instead of address, it should be XCN is contact, XTN is telecom, XAD is address, right?
Hmm.
Yeah,
Yep.
so similar kind of concept is there, although the name is different. Here we refer it as address and contact directly. So we can navigate to this particular web link and see all the data types that are possible. And there is a web link for the extensions as well. So it is equivalent of Z segment in HL7v2, and how to work with this extension, how to interpret it, and how to add new elements. So this can be done here. Again, we'll cover all these in future sessions one by one. But just to give you a placeholder where everything is placed,
Hmm.
so that even if you don't have slides, you can navigate to these particular web links and check. And also, if you want to explore more than that is available within the slides, then you can also come here and check it.
Okay.
Then for the implementer support, uh, for the testing purpose, you will see some Fire servers available in this particular link. What are the different use cases that that is possible? Some use cases Fire community has formulated and keep it here. And how to do the version management. By version management, we mean today we are working with Fire R4. Tomorrow it would be R5 or R6. So how that version management is possible when it comes to implementation. And then the download parts will have the way you can download HL7v2 whole document, or maybe HL7v2 structure. Similarly, this particular web link will have links to download the whole specification in the JSON format. For example, we read about resources, we read about patient, practitioner. So those individual resources can also be downloaded, as well as the complete set that is available in the Fire. All the resources all together, all the structure definition altogether can be downloaded through this particular web link.
Hmm.
And there are different modules are there. You see security and privacy, you see exchange terminologies. So what has to be taken care while working with security and privacy, or what framework is given by Fire so that this can be implemented. For example, Fire has provided resources such as audit and event and provenance. These can be used to track what has been going on with a particular system. We'll cover in detail these as well, but just to give you that the placeholder is available here.
Okay.
Similarly, these structure definition capability statement, these are something that are much more technical front for the implementers. We'll work with these while working with resources and detail.
Okay.
Similarly, if you want to read about what searches are supported by Fire, what REST APIs are supported by Fire, these are available here. And different resources are being clubbed together in different modules. For example, this administration module has patient, practitioner, care team. These kind of resources are there. While if you are implementing any clinical workflow, then these kind of resources are there that you can navigate and fulfill your purposes. So if you directly open the list of 145 resources, it might be hard for you to figure out which resource to work with for your particular use case. So from these modules you can actually get an idea of which resource could be useful for you. For example, if you are implementing any financial workflow, then for example of insurance, then you can navigate to this particular module and get a list of resources that could be useful to you. So these different modules are there. So we'll work with this one by one in later sessions. Yeah, so just since you're already aware with the JSON structure, I'll also cover that as well in today's session. So I have just clicked on that particular link JSON in the home page. And if you see, these are the different types of elements that you will see while working with JSON. So there would be an element which will have direct primitive value. There would be element which have complex data type, and then this complex data type will have sub elements. Then there would be elements which have nested childs, and some elements would be reference to another resources. For example, patient could be reference to encounter or appointment or other resources. So these 4 different types of elements you will see. In today's session, we'll not go in detail, in these particular elements. While working with data types, we'll actually cover all these things. Okay. But just to give you a quick overview of how the structure would look like. And there are few rules out there, while working with Fire. I have just clubbed together here from implementation perspective, what would be useful. I've clubbed it here. JSON element are never empty. Whenever you are providing any element, make sure it's never empty. It should have some value. Otherwise, servers might reject it, or backend implementation, wherever you are saving it, could reject it. But again, it depends on server to server or implementation to implementation. I have seen servers which actually rejected saying 400 band request, while some servers just ignores that particular empty segment and process the rest of it. That is also a particular use cases there. And then whenever you are publishing any JSON file, make sure you convert into UTF-8 character encoding and then publish it. And the format type, you might have seen headers such as content type, while working with HL7v2. I guess with HL7v2, you usually keep this content type as text. Yep. Yeah, so with Fire, this is the formal format type supported application Fire plus JSON. But you will also see implementation where it will accept only JSON or application/JSON. This is because people are used to working with this particular content type. If it was not JSON, if it was not Fire, then people were using just JSON or application JSON. So some servers or implementation might have picked up on the same to make it less complex for the implementers. And JSON elements can appear in any order. So if you see any resource, for example, if I open a patient resource itself, you will see some elements, or let's say account I have opened. You will see some elements mentioned in the order, such as identifier, status, type. While creating a JSON instance of it, it doesn't matter whether a status element comes first or identifier elements comes at the last. The order of these elements would not matter when it comes to JSON. Although while working with XML, this particular order matters. Otherwise, the server will reject it as a 400 band request. Yeah. So this is in a nutshell about summarizing how we are working with JSON. And again, throughout the session, since we are using JSON as one of the formats, so we'll see a lot of errors that are possible, a lot of ways to handle JSON and how to structure it. Okay. That's why I'm not going in detail much as of now. And these are some links that you can refer if you are curious. Comparison with Fire with previous standards. Although these are S23 Fire links I have given, but the same can be applicable to R4 as well. Let me see. I guess if I can directly get the links from here, it should also be available here. Documentation, then use cases, comparison with Fire R4. It should be somewhere, or might be, it is inside any of these sublinks. So, you can go through these links and see how it is different from, previous versions. And these are links of executive, clinical, and, architecture introductions that I have just shown you here. Yeah, we'll cover these in detail in, further sessions.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's all, I had for today. If you have any questions that we can take the time.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, a couple of questions.
Yes, please.
Question one is, how long it takes to get certified in FHIR if you put regular efforts?
If you put regular efforts, it's not much of a complex task to do. If you have experience with healthcare, if you have experience with fire, then it won't be much of a difficult task. You can go through this particular course or this particular slides that I'm taking into that we will print, and it would be enough for you to appear for the exam and get the certification. For a beginner who is starting afresh, I would say if you going through the assignments that I'm giving through this particular course, that would be enough, for appearing for a certification exam. So 1 month, I would say max, if you're a total beginner.
Okay. And after completing the course, you can take 1 month and you can appear.
Yes, yeah.
General, what will be the cost of the certification?
Cost of certification will have that session as well. We'll cover how to apply for it and the cost around it. I don't actually remember it, but
not a problem. Not a problem. Okay, one more question. As a part of training, okay, a daily basis, are we going to give this videos also? Whatever we're discussing.
So Srinivas is actually recording it. So I guess he can forward you to the recorded sessions as well.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll definitely forward you the slides or PPTs that we are looking.
Okay.
But Srinivas can also forward you the recordings.
Yeah, record. If the recordings are there, then we can refer it at any point of time.
Yes, yeah, that is always helpful, because in slides everything not is possible to capture. And yeah. So what would be your usual timings that you will prefer for the session?
Not a problem. 8 to 9 is okay for me.
Okay.
Morning.
Okay. In case we stretch it to 9 to 10, does that work?
9 to 10 will be a problem for me.
Okay. So 8 to 9 is a comfortable time.
Yeah, 8 to 9 is comfortable.
And in any case, if we are looking into evening sessions?
Evening at what time? Actually, evenings I will have a client calls, continuous calls.
Okay, fine. So, okay, fine. 8 to 9 work comfortably for you, right?
Yep, 8 to 9 is 100% I'm free.
Then no issues. We'll stick to that.
Okay. Yeah, this all from my side. How to pay payments and all.
Srinivas will get in touch with you after the session, I guess.
Oh, okay. Sure. Okay. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. So hopefully we'll start tomorrow.
Yep, definitely. Yep. Thanks a lot.
Thank you for joining. See you. Bye.
Bye.